I'm Bianca Tarrant, co-founder of Our Cow, and welcome back to Paddock Talk. If you've been following our series, you'll know we love shining a light on the people who put food on our tables, the farmers who do it tough, adapt, and find a way forward. In this episode, we're heading to Queensland's South Burnett region to meet farmer Belle. She's just 25 years old, already running her own beef cattle operations, and was named Queensland's top young farmer for 2025. But Bee's journey to the land isn't what you'd expect. From unconventional beginnings to building an empire on grit, hustle, and an unshakable love of farming, Belle is redefining what it means to be a modern Australian grazier. Welcome to the podcast,
Welcome.
Farmer Belle.
Hey, Belle.
G'day.
What do you like to be called? Bee, Farmer Belle?
Like
Literally, either like Bee or Belle.
Okay,
I don't mind at all.
right. Good.
Well, thanks so much for jumping on. We're really excited to have you. And first of all, I just want to say a big congratulations on being awarded the Queensland Top Young Farmer. So can you give us a little bit of a rundown? Like, how did this come about? Like, how
How'd
did
you get nominated?
what happened? Give us the story.
I don't even know. I had a lovely lady who actually told me about it. I had literally no idea at all. And she said, you're in the running, like you're nominated against my son for like Queensland Top Farmer of the Year or whatever, like young farmer. And I was like, nominated for what? So like at the same time, like I was just like looking it up and I was like, I didn't even know this was a thing. And then I looked it up and I was like, holy shit, like I've actually been, and I think at that time, I think I already had votes or something like that. So people had to actually nominate you for you to be in the thing. You weren't automatically just in. So I'm like, who the hell know? Because usually I'd get people on Instagram and be like, you know, you've just been nominated for this, or I just nominated, except no one told me until this lady. And then I wasn't going to post it on anything. So I was like, I wanted it to be a fair thing. And I'm really, you know, I wish, you know, the Courier Mail or whoever organized it had the rundown of each person and why they've been nominated and stuff like that. And it was really upsetting that they didn't do that, because it was purely just, you know, you get whoever knows you to vote for you. Like, it wasn't like you're like other people. I'd prefer to look at it and be like, oh, this person's doing this. This person's doing this. Like, I'm going to vote for this person because that sounds really great. And I was like, so why the hell have I been voted? Like, you know, and I just thought it was like quite unfair, but that's why I sort of didn't share it to Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that and be like, look, I've been nominated, vote for me. And I was like, nah, because like surely all of those other people are deserving. So I'm like, I'm just going to see how it plays out. And then, yeah, I had a bloody journo message me on Instagram being like, you won. And I was like, me? I was like, why the hell did I win? I was like, I barely shared it to like Facebook because I saw everyone else sharing it to Facebook that had entered. And I was like, hang on a damn minute. I wasn't going to share it at all, but I was like, you cheeky fuckers are sharing it to yours. So then all your friends and family are voting for you. And I was like, nah, I'm still going to play it fair. I don't want to post it because then it's going to be literally so completely unfair.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it was like a shock to me that I won. And I was like, shit, that's rigged.
Good on you, mate. Congratulations.
Great.
You got to take the W when you can. So well done. So what
Absolutely.
happens now? Like, is there like a gala dinner? Like, is there a national award, or like, what's the story? Do you know?
I literally have no idea. I was hoping they'd give me some sort of like physical friggin' award for my mentors.
Yeah, right.
In the pool room.
Yeah, literally be like, oh, somebody will come into my house, be like, oh, what's that award for? I'm like, well, let me tell you a story. Yeah, I have actually no idea. I haven't heard any more about it. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Righto. Well, we'll find out down the track, I guess. But so, like, obviously, you're at this point now. You've won this award for the young farmer in Queensland. But like, take us back. Like, tell us where, like, a little bit about like where you grew up, what was your kind of background, and all that sort of stuff, and how did you get to this point? I guess so. Give us a little bit of a rundown on your farming background and where you grew up.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Gippsland in Victoria. Such
Yeah.
a beautiful place. Everybody that goes there is like, wow, it's really stunning. But it is friggin' wet all of the time. It is raining all of the time. You get the winter blues. It's friggin' shocking, but it's such a nice place. So I actually grew up on my parents' property. I have 7 other sisters. And
Wow.
funnily enough, only 2 of us girls are into farming. All of the rest just parted ways, and they're like, nah, we don't want a bit of the farm. We're not into farming. And then, you know, we'd have days where mum and dad would, you know, tee up days where we all had to mark calves or, you know, drench cattle or whatever, and the girls would be complaining, being like, I don't want to be a part of this, and mum and dad were like, you've got to all pitch in. So I would be excited. I feel like I was the only one that was excited, that was like, yes, we're gonna barcast today, except we didn't have it was always like super hilly country, so we didn't really have any. Oh, we had an Argo at one point, but we didn't really have like a quad or anything, and we didn't have working dogs. Like I was the first one to get a working dog, so like all of us kids were literally the working dogs. Like we were
Kids.
walking up and down these friggin' hills mustering these cattle on fucking foot, and it was friggin' out. So it really shaped us. But yeah,
Seven
grew up.
sisters, like
Pardon?
seven sisters. That's definitely
That's a mad
you
hit.
had your own pack of working dogs with your sisters as well.
Literally, I was like, these are everyone's always like, poor dad. I'm like, mate, he had his own fucking Kelpie crew. I was like, he did this on purpose. But yeah, so grew up on mum and dad's farm, and then we were always leasing like other blocks, and mum and dad were doing beef as well as doing, they had multiple other jobs. Like dad's a fencing contractor, and then, they were both working at the sale yards, and then, they just had job after job after job. And then they were also doing, relief milking. So like me and my sister would come along as kids and teens, and that's how we would earn our money. Like one of my sisters, she got paid $5 for a milking. So like then we sort of, mum and dad would have beef on the side, and then, would also be doing dairy farming as well. We didn't own our own dairy farm, but we'd be doing like contract relief milking for like friggin' bunch of different people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what made me hate dairy farming, because I did it for like, shit, I did it for like 15, 20 years. And then I was like, nah, I was like, I friggin' hate waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I actually branched out, and I started, as a 14-year-old, I worked at a cinema, I worked at a theme park, I worked at like a grocery store. Like I didn't really, know that farming was my purpose, even though I absolutely loved it. I was like, oh, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. And it wasn't until, had a bunch of jobs, and then I just always kept coming back to farming, and I was like, I just love farming so much, but like I never thought I could run it myself, because everybody is like, you either have to inherit the property or you have to marry a rich farmer. And I was like, yeah, but that puts so much pressure on you. Like you're like, oh, I have to find love immediately if I want to have my own farm. And I was like,
Yeah.
fuck that, I don't want to do that. Anyway, so I started working on stations as well. So I think when I turned 21, I worked on my first station. That was sheep and cattle, and I like mum and dad didn't have sheep then, so it was just such a new experience for me, and I absolutely loved working on stations, and that's what brought me back to like, being farming full time, because I just loved it so much. And then with that station, I'd actually gotten into a car accident with a few of the other employees, and then because I was on a trial period, it caused, the owner said it caused a lot of stress to the company that we were in a car accident. So I was, last in, first out.
Yeah.
So I got, that contract sort of got terminated, and then, I had back problems and neck problems, and I was out of work for a hot minute, and I didn't have like cattle of my own at the time because I was working on the station, and mum and dad still has theirs. But I started doing I started getting back into farming.
Yep.
And then built my own empire.
Oh, good on you, mate. Well done. And what like Gippsland is a fair way from like the South Burnett. Like
Good.
what attracted you to that area? Like why did you buy your country around there?
I love the heat so much, and because 'cause I'm so used to Victoria just raining all the bloody time.
Yeah.
Once I worked on that station in New South Wales, and then I worked on one in Queensland, and then after that one, I sort of was just hanging around the Queensland area, and I was driving around and sort of experiencing a bit of Queensland, and I just fell in love with it then, and I was like, "I want to buy a farm up here." Like the seasons are completely different, like their wet season, and I was like, oh my god, there's just so much to learn. And their cattle, like we don't really have many friggin' Bos Indicus cattle down there, it's mainly Bos Taurus. So I'm like, oh, I really want to learn it. I'm like, Jesus, I really want to I really want to learn about these cattle, and all of these weeds and all of these different things. So yeah, I just fell in love with the heat and all the differences.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like obviously like there's been some knockbacks along the way, like, working on different stations and all that. And I know what it's like. I've seen, Bianca working on properties and things like that, and kind of like the knockbacks that she experienced. Like tell us a little bit about some of that you experienced as like a young girl working on a few properties, and like the challenges I guess that you face from that.
I think the main challenges were, like I sort of got my jobs off Facebook on, ringers from the top end and stuff like that. That's how I found my station jobs. And I'd obviously been accepted for a couple of them, but I'd been knocked back obviously because there was someone with more experience, or there was someone, who, is a bit stronger than me and stuff like that. So it was really tough and it was really disheartening, having men being put before you, and even some of these men just because they were stronger. Like I was like, I sort of have like more experience though, like with cattle. And I'm
Yep.
just like, oh, this is a bit unfair here. And I ended up working with one bloke who is literally getting paid like $70,000 more than I was, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "This
Yep.
is so unfair." Like, I'm giving a red hot crack. Like, I've always had the mentality like I'm gonna try everything, and I think that's why I was successful at getting those jobs. And whenever people ask me, what advice do you have? Like, I want to work on a station. I'm like, be willing to try anything, because your employer is going to be like, are you willing to get your truck license? Like, you okay with riding a horse? You okay with riding a bloody two-wheeler? You okay with doing this? And if somebody is going to say, oh, I'm unsure about that, like I'm a little bit nervous, I don't think I want to get my truck license, then you're probably not going to get hired. But because I was willing and I was like, yep, I'm going to give anything a crack. And even though, oh my God, it was friggin' hell and it was so difficult, it shapes you, and then you learn to love it because you get used to it so quickly.
Yeah, I think like that's why you are who you are and why you've been so successful, mate, because you are willing to give anything a crack. Like
Mm.
that's just like the number one attitude you got to have, and that's why you are where you are. So
Especially being a
congratulations.
girl too. Like if you're a girl and you're working in those environments and you're like, oh nah, not like it's
Yeah,
not for me.
bit too
Like
prissy for
straight
sure.
away you get tarnished with the, oh, she's just a girl, like that brush.
Yep.
And I've always found like you like as a girl, you honestly have to work 10 times harder than a fucking bloke just to be able to get the same amount of recognition as a bloke.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, because like men, men aren't going to turn around and be like, "Oh no, mate, I'm not going to do that." Men are just going to do it.
They're just gonna
Men are
do it.
just going to do it, and then you see women and they're like, "Oh, I'll just leave it to the boys if the boys want to do it." Where I was like, "No, fucking get me in there as well." I was
Yeah.
like, "What are you doing?" I might not be as strong, but I'm going to try my hardest. So I'm wrangling these sheep and I'm flipping them on their backs, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like my back is breaking, but I was like,
Just
you
give it
just got to
a crack.
give it absolutely everything.
Yeah, it's not from like a lack of effort or a lack of trying.
And that's
Yeah.
the number one thing that I find, like just having the right attitude, and yeah, it's super good.
So, walk us through your farm pathway journey, because it's not it's not a conventional farm pathway. It's like, normally for a person going onto a farm, it's like succession, inherited, that sort of stuff. And even for us, like we didn't inherit our place. Like we know.
It's fucking tough, man. Like it is proper tough. And like I know all the things that you would have went through as well. Like, okay, you're looking around for a farm, you're looking for this, you're going through realestate.com, like all this shit. And I know like it would have been challenging to get to that point as well, going and talking to real estate agents and trying to work out all this sort of stuff. So like I just yeah, I'll take my hat off to you, but like it's awesome to see and
Yeah,
it's
give us the
yeah.
fun part. So did you like have in your mind that you wanted to buy a farm before starting your OF, or like how did all that work?
So before I started OF, I think the reason why I kept branching out, like out of farming, was because it was just, people had put in my head, it's unrealistic. You're never going to do it. You're going to have to inherit it. And I was like, I've got seven other sisters. What the fuck am I going to inherit? Literally a wheel off a tractor, mate. I was like, I'm not getting anything. So and then once I kept working at cinemas and stuff like that, I was like, this isn't taking me anywhere. Like I'm gonna be working full time for the rest of my life. And I was like, I need to like find a way to make extra money. And then, I started OnlyFans because there was nothing else for me to do. I couldn't work. I couldn't even work on the farm. I couldn't do anything because of my back injury. I couldn't go out and source work because, I was trying to get, sort of workers comp or whatever for my injury. And I was like, "Oh, I may as well give it a crack." And at the time, mum was going through cancer treatment. So I was like, watching my parents struggle financially, like just thinking about, you know, the money to help mum and get all these extra treatments and stuff like that, and taking the toll. And then they're also trying to run the farm, and they're trying to run this lease block, and they're trying to do this and this. And I was like, "Oh, I might be able to, I might be able to help out. Like, I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to say too much." And then, yeah, it was the only thing I could do without putting too much effort in. And then, yeah, I got onto it, and then I made $10,000 in the first week, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah. I was like, this is going to be good. So then, I think that really boosted me, you know, like I helped my parents out. I still continuously help my parents out, as well as myself, setting myself up. Um, and as soon as that started coming in, I got back into cattle. I was buying my own cattle. I was breeding my own cattle. And I was like, yeah, I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. This is the path. This is literally who I am. I'm always at my happiest when I'm farming. And then I was sort of on the market, even when I was making so much money from OnlyFans. I was like, I still want to work on another station. Like I'm still making that money, but I want to keep working on a station because, you know, you do your OnlyFans. What the fuck else do you do for the rest of the day? You feed cattle, and then, you know, like what else is there to do for the rest of the day? Because I didn't own my farm at that point. So I was like, I need something else to do. I mentally was not in the right space, and I was like, I need a job to do. So I worked on a station in Queensland in Longreach, and it was just so remote that I was actually losing thousands of dollars. I loved the job so much, but I was losing thousands of dollars because I had no reception. So I had to leave that job because I was like, I love it so much, but I was like, if I'm setting myself up for the rest of my life, I have to sort of do this friggin' OnlyFans thing. So I ended up leaving that job. And then for a couple of years after that, I've just been on the hunt for a farm, and I was like, I want it to be perfect, and I want it to be, you know, I want it to have a bit of acreage, and I want it to, you know, have a pool ideally and be a big house so my family can come visit. And the place that I've got just ticked all of the boxes, and it was quite difficult trying to get it because, you know, your bank is obviously like, oh, is this a steady income? You know, and I was like, well, it would be a steady income because as soon as I buy it, then I can fucking farm animals off it. So I'm like, you're literally preventing me from doing it anyway. And then I come up to view this property with my parents, and the people were sort of like, because I come up with my parents because I wanted their opinion as well. And, you know, because something I might overlook, dad will be like, oh, hang on a minute, you know, there's no water going to this bloody paddock or whatever.
Yeah.
And mum and dad loved it. Mum and dad fell in love with it as well. And, you know, in the process of buying it, you know, the agents were sort of just looking at my parents like, you know, as if they were buying it. And both mum and dad were like, you know, they would say something to my parents, and my mum and dad were like, we're not the one that's buying it. It's actually our daughter B that's buying it. And then they're like, oh, okay. And I was just like, oh, Jesus, it's going to be a bit of a shit show. Please don't ask questions. Anyway, yeah. And then I bought this place, and then, you know, I still have lease blocks, and I have other properties, and, you know, and I've just sort of just built it all up. And, you know, it's not, you know, your standard way where you either inherit it. And, you know, I've gotten a lot of hate from people being like, you know, you don't deserve this award because you didn't work hard for your money. And, you know, you have to, no actual farmer, you know, earns their money outside of farming to start a farm. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, you guys crack the shits that, you know, there's, you know, companies and shit outside of Australia, non-Australians that are buying up these farms, and you're like, oh my God, like we need to stop them buying our farms. And then when some fucking little Australian might get her money, you know, a different way, buys a farm, then you're cracking the shits as well. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm literally keeping it in Australia. I'm an Australian. So yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride.
Uh,
Do
Dude,
the banks see OnlyFans as like an income stream? Like, how did that come about? Did you have to try and prove that you had a steady income to get a loan?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. At first they were like, oh, there was a lot of banks that actually knocked me back a ton, you know, like they'd sort of breadcrumb you and be like, yep, you're gonna get this property, and then smack bang, I'd get an email and it's like, nah, you can't get this property because we're not gonna accept it. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, I'm never gonna be able to get a property. And then eventually, you know, my bloody mortgage broker was just so convincing to them and was like, she's making a lot of fucking money, and like proved and gave all of, you know, all of my sort of statements from OnlyFans and stuff like that, and was like, this is how much money she's making, you know, like freaking seven figures. And then they were like, holy fuck, okay, she makes money, all right, we'll give her the farm. So yeah, it was so difficult being knocked back so many times, and I was like, shit, I'm just gonna have to keep saving. And then eventually I had a breakthrough, and I was like, hallelujah.
yeah.
And it's wild because, like, we talk about it all the time, like the deposit that you need to buy a farm. Like, I don't know what it was for you, but for us, it was like 40 to 50% of
Yeah.
of the purchase price. Like, who
Yep.
the fuck can save that amount of money on a wage?
Yeah.
Like, you literally can't.
No.
And doing stuff outside of farming, like, we work for the devil, a coal mine, so, like, it was probably a lot we did did a lot of bad shit too to get to, buying our farm, so
But you have to, like,
you've gotta think outside the box, like,
and
you gotta hustle.
people that say shit like that, like, oh, you can't work off farm. Like, you can't afford to stay on farm without that.
You gotta hustle, you gotta be doing everything you can, and, like,
There's not many people that get to that point. Like, you think about a few people that might have, like, they have a big trading operation that allows them to buy a place, or they are just a heap of country and then they can borrow against their cattle or whatever. Like, yeah, you have to, like, get creative. Like, $500,000 for a deposit doesn't just drop into your bank account overnight.
yeah, yeah.
Literally. And like you said, so your first week on OnlyFans was $10,000, but you say yourself, like, not everyone makes it on OnlyFans. Like, you can't just, like, snap your fingers and
Yeah,
be
I can't just get on there and take my gear off and make a fortune, like,
it
you
can
like,
cost us money if
that
you went on there.
that's a it's a
They'd have
hustle.
to pay you to put your clothes on.
Exactly right, so,
Like,
like,
how do you get to that? Like, how did that even happen? Like, was the platform really established when you went on there? And, like, how do you go from, like, nothing to that, or, like, within a week?
Yeah, literally, when I first started, I had like -$8 in my bank account. I was borrowing money off my sister, and I was helping dad fencing contracting, and I was like, fucking hell, I just need to make some sort of money. Like, I'm so stressed. I got my phone bill, I got to pay for fuel, and I've got -$8. And it's just engraved in my brain, going from -$8 to $10,000 in my bank account. And I was like, holy fuck, I've never seen this much money in my bank account before. And I think the main thing, like, I still have people to this day being like, how did you promote your OnlyFans? How did like, can you give me some tips and tricks? And I look at their profile and they've got 400 followers. And I was
Yeah.
like, you can't just scroll OnlyFans and be like, it's not like TikTok, like, oh, I'm going to follow this person. I'm going to follow this person. I'm like, they need to have your link. They need to know about you already so that they can go to your profile, find your link, and then subscribe.
So
And
did you have
at
a
that,
social media following?
pardon?
Did you have a social media following before?
Yeah, so on TikTok, not on Instagram, but on TikTok, I think I had like 40,000 followers. And
Yeah,
I
right.
was going on TikTok lives at like 2 o'clock in the morning when all of the Americans were on. And like I'd get like, like 2,000 people watching. And I sort of put it out there and I was like, like I need to earn a little bit of extra money. Like, you guys know I'm not working currently because I was in that car accident. What do you think about me doing this? And so many people were like, yes, do it. And I was just like nervous because obviously you're getting your kid off. Before OnlyFans, I'd literally never sent a nude in my fucking life. And I was like going from being a little good girl to like, holy shit, all of these strange men watching me naked. And that's why my parents were like, what the fuck? Mum's like, keep stuff to the imagination. And I was like, yeah, we'll do, Mum. And then I was like, oh, by the way. Anyway, but yeah, so you've sort of got to have some sort of following because they need to know about you already. And I think because I'm so like open and raw and I'm not faking it, and like, no offense to all of the other people, but like they're successful as well. But like, I'm not the type to look, ooh, I just can't imagine myself doing it, like standing in front of a camera and like and like
Yeah.
juggling your tits. I'm like, oh shit, I can't do that. So like, I barely promote it on my Instagram. I rarely ever like fucking post about it on my stories. I don't promote it on TikTok. Like, if they find it, they find it because that's just me. And like, I think that's what draws in like a shit ton of customers because they're like, you're not shoving it in our face. And I was like, if you subscribe, you subscribe. Sweet.
So what was your platform like before OnlyFans? If you had 40,000 followers before OnlyFans, were you posting like farming stuff, like just your like day in the life sort of stuff?
Oh shit, I think it was I can't remember exactly because it's not the account I have now because the old account previously got banned at 222,000. So then I had to restart on TikTok and now I'm up to 471 or whatever the hell it is. But I think when I was working on the first station, that's when I first downloaded TikTok, and I was one of those people that was like, I'm not going to download it. I'm not going to download it. And then eventually I was like, fuck, I'm so bored out here with one other bloke. I was like, yeah, stuff it. And I was doing like those sort of voiceovers where it's like, a scene cut out of a movie and you're just pretending like acting that it's you saying it and stuff like that. And I'd get some followers, but it wasn't until I actually started speaking to the camera that like my account just blew up. Like, there was just one video of me speaking where like, holy shit, everyone everyone was like, holy fuck, I love the Australian accent. And that's literally what made it blow up, me just speaking. And then, yeah, it went from, it was sort of like milestones. It was like 10,000 followers. And I was like, holy fuck, I'm famous. And then 20,000. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, what the hell's going on? And then it got to 40,000. And yeah, so I think the key is not to try and impress, to literally just be yourself. And if you're Australian, fuck, you've already got one foot in the door.
Just talk.
Literally.
So I want to talk, like, obviously there's, you cop a bit of flack and you get a bit of hate in that as well. Like, how do you mentally deal with that? Because like we when we first started this, we used to get the same sort of flack, and you get like the vegans that'd smash us, or we'd get like people that'd just be like writing rank shit about you all the time. And like, I used to be like, I seriously took it so personally. I went to go and drive to one bloke's place that like put up a post one day, and I was going to bash him, you know what I mean? So like, just
This happened like 2 days ago. So Dave got an email the other day. From someone saying that
I don't deal with customer service.
this is why, for a good reason. Like, it was like, you guys are just turning into Woolworths. You're spending all your money on like fancy packaging instead of paying farmers. And Dave's like taking a video of our office. We work in like a crack house. It's not actual crack house, but we call it the crack house. So anyway, and he's like, yeah, you think this is fucking fancy? I've got holes in the floor. The lino's all ripped up. He's like, I'm drinking a black fucking cup of tea. Like,
But yeah, like, it's not about me. It's about B here. So I just want to know about, like, how do you deal with that? And I know that you say that, you try and just fob it off and all that, but like mentally, like, I know what it's like to fucking deal with these people that are just like at you and think that they know your life, and like they're trying to tear you down. And I think like it's a bad thing in Australian culture that we see, like tall poppy sort of syndrome, where you're sticking your neck out. Like, there's people out there that are going to say, oh, you haven't done this, you haven't worked hard, but mate, I guarantee you've worked harder than most people to get where you are. So like, how do you deal with that, like mentally? And then like just a little, like, how do you deal with it?
So I still, I always get messages from people being like, how do you have so much confidence? Like, I wish I didn't, sort of listen to what other people say, but like, do you have any advice for me? And I'm like, shit, I don't know if I do, because I've always been like this. I've always been the exact same person. Even in primary school and high school, whenever I had bullies, I was sort of just like, get real, mate. And I literally put it down to my parents. My parents literally raised all of us girls, and dad's a bloody comedian. He comes up with the funniest shit. And, you'd come home from school and you'd be like, these people are saying this stuff about me, dad. And he'd be like, he'd come up with just some hilarious sentence and be like, next time you see them, say this, or, like, tell them to shove it up their fucking ass. Like, mum and dad would have the best attitude about it. And I just put it down to my parents and the way they raised us. They weren't like, oh, it's okay, darling. You're like, you're okay. They raised us fucking tough kids. They're like, tell them to fuck off. They're like, literally just, so that's the way that I was raised. So that was just my mentality. Whenever I was bullied in school, I was just like, get real. Like, you must be so miserable with yourself. I was like, fucking take a look at yourself. And then as an adult, like, still to this day, I actually, I can't say that any comments, I get vile comments all the time, and it just goes straight over my head, because I'm like, you're not benefiting me in any single way. You are not paying my bills. You are not doing unless you're a subscriber, but you are not doing anything to benefit me. So I'm like, why the hell would I listen to you? It's always the people who have nothing going for their life, that are just sad. They're upset. Their family's probably falling apart, or their job's probably falling apart, and they've got to take it out on someone else. So that's the way that I look at it. I'm like, unless you're, doing something better for my life, like, I might take into account what my family have to say, and they'll be like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea, blah, blah, blah. Like, mum said to me the other day, she's like, oh, I just don't know if you're going to find a man. She's like, and I was like, mum, don't stress about it. I was like, literally don't stress about it. But, I was like, if I'm not stressed, you shouldn't be fucking stressed. But I think, honestly, it's the way you raise your kids. And it is literally, you've got to look at it as, if you're not benefiting my life, I don't need to fucking listen to you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the only one that's in charge of the way that my life pans out. So I'm like, ears are closed, tunnel vision. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's get these dreams coming true.
I think that is like a superpower in itself, mate. And there's like people that go through their whole life that can't experience like what that is to let that go.
Mm.
So like for you to have, have that mentality when you're so young is like a superpower in
Mm.
itself. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
get bogged down in that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us like a little bit about your actual farm.
Yeah.
Like how big
How's
is
your
it?
operation?
How many cows do you run? Like what do you do there?
What sort of cows? What do you crop anything? Like give us a bit of a rundown.
So, I wish it was cropping. I'd love to get into cropping, but it's just beef. I have beef. Like I've got lease properties down in Victoria. I own properties down in Victoria. I've got properties up here. I'm currently looking at another property to buy or another property to lease, but they're so hard to come by up here to lease them. Then I'm like, oh shit. Whereas like down in Victoria, like it's quite easy to come across, but like you're up against so many different people. Whereas up in Queensland, it just never nobody's ever leasing out their blocks. Um, but yeah, I've got friggin' acreage also. I have people bloody come onto my lives or message me and be like, how many acres have you got? How many head? And I'm like, I actually don't fucking know. I'm like, I've got cattle fucking flinging left, right, and center. I was like, I would actually have to go through the books, but I'm like, maybe a couple hundred, maybe a few hundred. I don't fucking know. I just know that I've got cattle down there and I've got cattle up here, and everything is so left, right, and center and everything that I'm just like, oh, holy shit, I don't even know. But
So what's
yeah,
it
got
what's it
a
selling
got
the
a
life?
couple
What's
hundred head currently, and
Yep.
always looking at the market, but the market's so expensive right now that I'm like, oh, and we're coming into the wet season as well, so I'm like, it's just going to get more expensive. So I'm sort of holding off right now, and waiting until fuel my steers are a bit bigger, and then fatten them up and get rid of those lots. See what the market's like or whatever, and then yeah, I've got cows and calves down in Victoria, but I don't have cows and calves up here because there's like a ton of wild dogs in the area. And most of my neighbors just do steers, or they do heifers. They don't usually do calves because of these wild dogs in the area. And then one of my neighbors, she does breeders, and the wild dogs just come in and they take those fucking calves. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to go through that until these fucking wild dogs. There's one big black fucking wild dog that is just well known. Nobody can shoot the bastard. So I'm like, I'm not willing to risk a ton of calves because of these dogs. So I'm like, I'm just going to play the safe bet and I'm going to do weaners for now. And then, yeah, maybe do breeders on a different property where there's less wild dogs. I mean, they're everywhere, but yeah, less wild dogs. But yeah, so I've got a bit of a mixed herd. Down in Victoria, I mostly have Angus, or we have I have Speckled Park. My parents have Speckled Park. They have Angus. We sort of have similar breeds. But mostly the Bos Taurus down there. For the colder climates, that's what we're used to. And then up here, I've got a mixed bunch. I've got the Bos Taurus, I've got the Bos Indicus. I've got the Drought Masters, I've got Brahmins, I've got Charolais, I've got Brangus, just a total mixed bunch. But that's only because, they're steers. I'm like, it doesn't really matter too much. Whereas if I was doing breeders, I think I would just stick to one breed, which I'm looking at doing that in the next year, hopefully. Maybe just stick to bloody Charolais or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always sort of planning for the future, being like, oh, how can we better this? And it's a real learning experience going from Victoria, going to, those sorts of cattle to the ones up here, and, sort of learning all about them. It's just so bloody fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And like, what's a day in the life look like for you? You got like some contractors helping you out? Are you just on the farm by yourself, like managing? Like, obviously, you're doing a few trade steers and stuff like that. You're just managing those yourself, and then you got someone that helps you out down south as well. Like, and then the other question is like, how did you learn all this stuff to be like? It's obviously you've worked on a couple of properties and stuff, but I know, like I've spoken myself, like it's a lot different, like driving a car to actually watching someone else drive the car, like
Yeah.
learning about all this stuff yourself, and especially when you're running your own operation.
Yeah, so up in Queensland, I do it myself, and then down in Victoria, Dad takes care of all the animals down there. And then when they go away, it's a bit of a shit show because I'm like, I need someone to look after my property so I can go down there and look after the animals there. Because my sisters aren't really into farming, but like they're like forced to get into farming. So we're like,
Yeah.
Mum and Dad need to go away, so you need to look after the fucking animals. But yeah, I mostly look after them up here, and then when it's time to help out down there, Mum and Dad might be, marking calves and, marking sheep and stuff like that. And I come down when I'm able to. So, we might tee up and be like, all right, we've got to mark calves and sheep. So I'm like, okay, I'll see if I can get the neighbors to look after my property and check in with the freaking chooks and dogs and horses and cattle and freaking everything. And I'm like, surely nothing will go wrong for like a week. Like, please, for the love of God. And so far, so good. So far, so good. Freaking touch wood. But yeah, I'll head down there and I'll help out down there when we've got something big. And then when I'm up here, I've got great neighbors. Like I'm in such a good bloody area that my neighbors
Muscle.
are just willing to help out. And then it's sort of, like it's not like I've done this favor for you, you owe me. It's just like, oh, let me know when you need a hand. And then when they need a hand, they're like, hey, do you have a bit of free time? It's not like, hey, remember that time I helped you out? It's just, oh God, they're the friggin' best. So they help me out. They help me out in the yards if I need to mark any cattle or drench them or whatever. And then I sort of tee it up also when mum and dad come up in motorhome or fly up or whatever. And I'm like, oh, whilst you're here. So literally next week, mum and dad are coming up and I'm like, great, because I've got to weigh cattle. So I'm like,
Love
let's
it.
put you to work. But yeah, I obviously learnt a lot from my parents and growing up on the farm. Like I'd be like, why do they do this? And mum and dad are pretty good educators. And sometimes it can be a bit tough. Like dad's like, what do you mean you just don't understand? And I was like, Dad, I don't understand. Like, can you explain it a bit more? And classic dad, friggin' all dads are like that. And then yeah, mostly just experiences like going with mum and dad to do, milking and, just following mum and dad wherever they went, whatever pathways. Like they both worked at the sale yards. So then, I'd come along to the sale yards and I'd be watching the market as a kid and even as a teenager. Like I'd sort of wag school and I'd come down to the sale yards to like watch, what the market's doing. And I'd be like, mum, I don't understand trade cattle and I don't understand like store markets and stuff like that. And they'd explain it to me then. And then in school, because we had to have like an extra, sort of an extra curricular or whatever the hell you call it, I chose ag because I was like, you can always learn more. So I started doing that and it was really hard for me. Like school, I feel like, school is hard for friggin' everyone, but I just couldn't understand bookwork. Like I need someone to show me physically, otherwise I'm not going to understand it. And that's what was so good about TAFE, because they'd take us on day outs and be like, they'd teach us how to drive, tractor and stuff like that. And I would think that I'm fucking so cool because I'm like, Dad's already shown me this, so I don't have to learn it. So I'm like fucking ripping skids in this fucking tractor. And then everyone's like, well, that's so what was in my fucking mind. But everyone's just standing there being like, fucking here we go. But yeah, so I did ag TAFE. I think I got my certificate 2, 3, and 4 or something like that. And it wasn't necessarily so I could get jobs. It was just like I just want to learn a bit more and see what else like there else is to learn. And then yeah, just working on stations and getting different jobs and working on the stations. Like I'd never worked with sheep before, and everyone's like fuck sheep, like hate sheep, but I was like I love working with sheep, and I was like I fucking loved it so much. And there would be days where the shearers would be, you know, they'd be shearing all the freaking sheep and we'd have 3,000 to go through. And the bloke that I was on the station with, he'd fuck off and do some other job. And I would be the only one having to drench those 3,000 sheep. So I'm fucking punching this gun in this mouth. And then, oh my God, it was just, oh, such a learning experience, but I freaking loved it. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, just getting different jobs on different properties all the time. My dad used to say to me, it doesn't look so good on your resume that you've had 10 different jobs. And I was like, yeah, but I like to experience different things. So, I'd leave out some jobs that I'd have on my resume because I'm like, it probably does look bad. Like it looks like a bit fired, or, I don't commit to something. But I'm like, I just love to experience so many things. And a couple of years ago, actually, I started doing, it was like with learning online, another like another sort of ag course. And I did well, I didn't do, that's the point of it. I signed up, I paid like $4,000 because I wanted to study agronomy and I wanted to do pasture management and I literally did like 5 different courses, but I just didn't have enough time, and they only give you a year to do your courses and submit your courses. And I was like, that's not enough time for me. Like I've already got so much shit on. So I'm like, I wish they would just not have a time limit. And
Yeah.
like, that taught me about the Bos taurus and Bos indicus. And that's, that was the thing that I studied. And before that, like that was only friggin' a couple of years ago. I didn't even know Bos taurus and Bos indicus was a thing. And still to this day, I talk to people about it because I'm like, it's so fascinating, is it? Because they're like, what the fuck does Bos taurus and Bos indicus mean? And I'm
Yeah.
like, right? I have no idea about it. But that was a really good course, but I wish that I stuck to it, but I just didn't have enough time. So yeah, the way that I learned things was It's so much easier physically, you know, working on stations. They'd be like, oh, the reason we do this, and they'd showed me exactly. And then you see, because people get shitty and they're like, why do they cut the tails off lambs? And then I learnt on the farm that, they get fly blown, and I've seen the maggots firsthand just freaking eating these sheep alive. And I'm like, it's so much better to learn it in person and learn it physically than over a piece of fucking paper. Cause, you're looking at this piece of paper and you're like, what the fuck? And then the teacher tries to explain it. And it's just, it's so much better when you're in the moment, like learning it.
So
It
practical learnings to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, unless you've learnt it yourself, it's even hard to explain that to, like, an everyday person. Like, even some of our customers trying to explain to them, like, why we do stuff on the farm, like, why do we drench cattle and all that sort of stuff. They're like, "Oh, that must be so bad," or, like, I put a video up the other day of a automatic sheep handler, and they're like, "That looks so painful for the sheep." I'm like, "It's literally so calm, and it's, like, so safe, and it saves so many arguments," but, like, until you're in the moment, like, trying to explain that to people, yeah,
Yep.
hands-on makes a big difference. So what's the plans for your farm going forward? Like, what do you wanna do there?
What's the big goal? I'd love to see what your aspirations are and where you're going from here.
What's the big goal? I think hopefully next year. I really wanted to get into stud cattle, but I was like, oh, I feel like
Yeah.
that's gonna be such a bitch getting into stud cattle and registering every single friggin' calf and doing this. And I was like, maybe that's a little bit too much for me. So I was like, maybe hopefully I'll, hire another young female and teach her along the way. And, because I was always pushed back. So I was like, I know exactly how it's like for young women to get a job. Um, and I was like, maybe I'll hire another young girl. And my plans for the future are, I'd love to just run one breed. I'd love to get it registered. I'd love to get it, known. So it's like, oh, Farmer Belle runs this, this herd or this stud or whatever. And I'd also love to do sort of farm stays. So I'd love to teach people even more, even if they're city slickers, um, people want to come out to the farm. And even if I do sort of, you know, they come and stay on the farm, and there'll be like, I don't know, 5 different families or whatever, and we'll learn to drive a tractor, we'll learn to drive, manual, we'll learn about animal behavior, and tell the difference between a mad bloody cow and something that's calm, the way that they hold their head, the way that they hold their body. Like, I just really want to teach people, because it was so hard for me to learn, and until people like dumb it down, you've got to really dumb it down for me to learn. And I think, that's also why I've become a bit successful with my TikTok, because I don't overcomplicate it, and I'm not, I'm really engaged in the video, and it's like talking to friggin' toddlers. Like, that's the way that I need to be spoken. So I'm like, I reckon other people are exactly the same, where it's like, somebody might explain about freaking, I don't know, tractors, and be like, you've got to use this stick and you've got to do this and blah, blah, blah. Whereas I'm like, this stick right here, this pushes this up and down, and I'll show exactly that. So I'm like, you've got to really dumb it down. So I'm like, I'd love to hold sort of farm stays and have a stud out there, and, just be known for like certain things. And, because one day I'm going to quit OnlyFans. I'm not going to do it for friggin' ever. So I'm like, that'll be sort of my purpose. And I think my parents would love that as well. I think Dad would love teaching people to fence, because he's a fencing contractor. And he's really good at dumbing it down as well. Even sometimes I bloody FaceTime him, and I'm like, Dad, this fucking fence. I'm like, I don't know how to friggin' do it, and I'm so used to you doing it that I'm like, I don't know how to do. And he's like, you got to go under and over and under and over, and I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway, but yeah, so I've always got some sort of dream. It's not like, oh, I'll see how life takes me. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna get to this point. I'm gonna make it happen.
That's so cool. Super
Yeah.
determined. I'm excited to watch how you pan all that out over the next couple of years, especially on your TikTok tutorials. Um, that's a wrap for today. Thank
Mm,
you so much.
Thank
I
you.
loved hearing all of that. Thanks, Belle. Can see how
that's all right.
passionate you are about farming. We finish every episode off with a little recipe.
Yep.
So, are you a cook? Are you much of a cook?
I hate cooking.
Right. Can relate. So, what's something that you cook that's not like toast at home? Like, what do you cook? What's your go-to meal?
I love spaghetti. I love spaghetti. And I think the key to spaghetti is our cow's mince number one. Oh my God. I love that video you did where it was like
Shameless plug.
comparison to Woolies mince. And I was like, it's so true, because I was a vegetarian for 10 years. So I'm like,
Really?
when I smelt the supermarket mince, I'm like, that's literally what turned me. Because I'm like, fucking smelled so bad. And I'd
Mm.
have to cover my mouth as I'm like making spaghetti. Um, But yeah, spaghetti is the friggin' key, and I believe you should literally just chuck a bunch of shit in. Like, people say, don't put like vegetables in spaghetti. It's meant to be like, just mince. Whereas I'm like, if you grind that shit up, so it's like literally like a paste consistency of, of carrots, of zucchini, of onion, and then you put in your tomato paste, you put in your diced tomatoes, you put in like, even a tablespoon of sugar, and then even tomato sauce and sugar. I'm like, I swear to God, I
That's the
stand by that,
secret.
because I will literally gorge myself on spaghetti. You've got to, because it's not just basic, like, a jar from the supermarket and your meat and your spaghetti. I'm like, just chuck random shit in. Chuck some tomato paste, some tomato sauce, grind up those vegetables so you're still getting your vegetables in, but you're not crunching on a bit of fucking carrot.
Yeah.
Yep, spaghetti bowl's the best.
That's your go-to.
sounds
Love
great.
it. Yeah.
Cool.
Love
Well, thanks so much for jumping on. Before we go, can I just ask one thing? We've got a mob of butchers that are like your number one fan. Can you just give a quick shout out to them? Can you say, just say something to
our butchers,
our
they'll
butchers.
they'll fucking die.
that they will love
That's-
so much?
Bit of a shout out to the butchers, hey. Just want to do a little shout out to all my little butchers out there. Love your videos, guys. Love the TikToks. I bloody live for the dancing and the friggin'. I swear I repost so many of them. Yeah, I love them. I'm watching all your videos all the time. So
And
I'm
a
always
big
watching
fan
now.
of the Our Cow meat products.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that was Farmer Belle, a young woman proving there is no one way to get into agriculture, as long as you've got the grit and determination to make it work. Her story is unconventional, bold, and inspiring, but at its heart, it's about the same thing all farmers share: a love for the land and a commitment to feeding the country. If you're enjoying Paddock Talk, share this episode with someone who loves a good yarn about resilience, reinvention, and the future of Aussie farming. We'll see you next time.